Welcome back to another episode of Just Real Quick. I'm your host, Jefferson K. Rogers. Excited for this one today. I got my co-host, Jeff Fieldstad, here with me. And in the studio today, one of our top leaders here at JKR Windows, Mr. Obadiah Longoria. Been with the company now close to 3 years.
Over 4.
Over 4 years?
Time flies when you're having fun, man.
Oh, my
I've
gosh.
been with you guys since end of June 2020.
End of June 2020.
Dang, that's awesome.
So 4.5 years this man has been with us. Really incredible to see the evolution of your career in sales, coming from being really skeptical about this thing, like never done sales before, outside of selling yourself as a handyman and a father, and everything else in life is sales, but new concept for you coming in here.
Oh, so different.
And would love to hear your explanation here in a second about that transition for you and being skeptical and coming in and trying to figure this thing out, seeing if it was going to be an option for you. But come from a similar background to me, handyman and blue-collar construction background, wanted and was looking for a change in your life to do something special with your life and for your family.
Mm-hmm.
JKR Windows just happened to be at the right place at the right time for you to make that possible.
Exactly.
So tell us a little bit about that, man. You still use your email. It's called
Helping Hand Services.
Helping Hand Services.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a long email. I should have used an acronym. Try typing that in every time. No, I would say like a while back, my buddy of mine introduced me to Robert Kiyosaki. Mm-hmm. As I read his Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and I was like, holy shit. There's a whole other way of doing things, and then working with construction guys and getting up close. I've always found myself moving up, and so I worked with one of the guys out here, Bang Concrete, and so he had me do a lot of side projects with him, and this guy come down and started talking to him, and he was a contractor, GC. Mm-hmm. Had no freaking clue about what he was talking about. Bang had to explain it to him. Mm-hmm. And I was like, is this how it always is? He's like, oh, yeah, all the time. These guys just pass the test, and they learn who to use to get the job done, and they make a ton of money. And I started in my head with that in the book, and I was like, I should start doing my own stuff. So I started a handyman business then. I started a trucking company and went back to handyman business after a stint with Western Transport Logistics. Yeah. So been into it, and then I restarted it January of 2020, my handyman business. Mm-hmm. It's a terrible time to try to start a business. Right before the pandemic.
Right before the world. Yeah.
Especially not being from the area in St. George. Yeah. So I'm not native. I'm not LDS. I'm just, grew up different place. So trying to get jobs, I started building up a clientele up until about March, and then it just hit me like a ton of bricks. Mm-hmm. And that first year starting a business, there's a whole lot of capital that you have to use to maintain, and it just started getting eaten through. Wow. And so it was just in a bad place, and Jared Everett ended up knocking my door, and I was in a lease to own at that house at that moment. And I was like, I don't own the home, and I was like, I didn't even know people replaced windows. Mm-hmm. I thought it was just like a wall. It's just there forever. You can just do the glass. And he was like, oh, no, they do it all the time. Mm-hmm. And then he started telling me, he's like, you've always been one of the smartest guys in the room, but you should really come look at this opportunity. And I was like, oh, hell no. Mm-hmm. I hate door-to-door knockers. They're the worst. And he's like, well, I just gave you his information. He said, just come check it out. And I think he had me try to reach out to you a bunch of times, and I just kept saying, oh, yeah, I reached out. He's busy. I don't know. And so then he made me call you, or he had you call me, and then we talked. And then I was like, all right, well, I like this guy. I'll at least go in and listen to it, because you had this voice that was like, if I don't do this, I'm kind of being an asshole, Mm-hmm. So I went and listened to it, and I was like, that's what sold me. I'll tell you right then, Jeff, that's what sold me.
Wow.
Seeing the window and being in construction, obviously, I'm like, that's quality. I see this stuff all the time. And then the way that you talked about it, and the way I think the philosophy that I have on selling comes from that point too. I said, look, Jeff, I don't want to be the door-to-door guy that just sits there at the door and doesn't let them close the door because I'm constantly pushing them and trying to sell them. He said, you don't have to. If they don't want it, then just leave. I was like, no freaking way.
Yeah.
It just went off from there. I couldn't even believe it when I first started knocking doors. I said, well, look, I'll give myself a week. I told my jobs that I told you I had a couple flooring jobs and a painting job. I told them I'll take a hiatus for a minute. I'm going to push this back, and I'll give myself a week and see what it looks like. Started knocking doors, and I remember the first time I went up and I tried to write out my name on a card. it looked like a seismic machine. It's like, because I was so damn nervous. But it was like I just kept working through the nerves, and I've always been, if I'm going to go all in. I'm not going to just tip my toes.
Mm-hmm.
So I dove in and I worked the hours, because Ty Hubbard at the time was the guy that was killing it. And you asked him in a meeting, what's the difference between you and the other guys? He said, I just worked the hours. I don't know. I said, well, shit, if this guy can do it, I can do it. And so I just kept working the hours and made it work. And I think I set like 10 appointments my first week. It was freaking nuts. Got my first sale, and I was like, and then my wife was like, well, let's see if he actually pays out on it, though. Everybody was, right? They're like, oh, yeah, whatever. And then the check came in, like, well, let's see if it happens again. It just, every step of the process has been that way. And then here I am, 4.5 years later, running an office. It's pretty amazing.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Good job, dude.
Well, that's the challenge with getting started in something new, because really you've got these voices from all around you saying, I'm not so sure you're cut out for that, and well, you're going to be one of those greasy freaking salespeople at the door-to-door. And every step of the way you're challenged. And if it's not you challenging yourself, it's somebody else challenging you. It gets you starting to think about it differently, like, well, maybe this isn't for me, and I don't know if I'm cut out for this long-term. And I'll give it 2 weeks, like most people tell us that so often.
Yeah.
Because I told myself I'd give myself 2 weeks to see if this was going to work.
Yeah.
And how often does it work when you have a plan B and you got 1 foot in and 1 foot out?
Yeah.
Because I was the same way, and I remember having those conversations early on. And I remember vividly with my uncle, the guy that I used to work for, because I was like, man, I might need a job back, Uncle Doug. Not so sure this is going to work out for me. And here's all the reasons why. And all the justifications that I had been rattling off in my head, I told him. And then he validated it for me. And he's like, you know what? I hear you, man. I tried to get into sales once too, and it didn't work out for me. So then I let myself off the hook. And then thinking about going back, I got done with that conversation with him, and it was like, I can't believe that makes me sick to my stomach. That I just made a plan B, and that I got 1 foot in and 1 foot out. And from that point on, it was a very memorable conversation because I went all in. Burned the boats. I told my Doug, I called my Uncle Doug, and I told him, I'm not coming back. I'm going to make this thing work. And it's very similar. And the reason that we can talk about this the way that we talk about it with new people is because we got to do it. We got to experience it firsthand. And there really is. If you got 1 foot in and 1 foot out, the likelihood of you succeeding in sales is so small. Oh, yeah. It's like this. It's what separates the greats from average and ordinary, because they're always on the cusp of just going back to do what they were doing before.
Yeah, it's commitment. I mean, if you're looking for something easy to do, the easy thing to do is quit, right? Rather than committing and doubling down and getting on the doors, setting the appointments, mastering your craft, and doing all those things that are very uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. It's interesting you said you talked to your uncle, too, because I feel like that's what a lot of people do that are new in sales or new in something. They'll ask somebody who hasn't been successful at that thing whether or not they should do it. Mm-hmm. Rather than finding somebody who has been successful at whatever they're trying to be successful at and figuring out, what can I do to be successful here?
Well, we're looking for a way to justify a decision we've pretty much already made.
Yeah.
I think I was the opposite. I tried to keep it out of my parents' ears.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want them to talk me out of it.
Well, that's smart.
I think I've told you before, I grew up in a very democratic, liberal household where I was always the victim. Okay. We were the victim of the rich. That's why Kiyosaki just blew my mind. Yeah. You know what I mean? Mm. And so then once I got into this, I did not want them to know what was going on until it got successful. I just told them, I'm going to go check out this window company, see how it does. And that was it.
Well, I remember you coming in, dude. You were one of those guys that you're always observing. I'm watching your eyes go across the room, and you didn't say a whole lot in the beginning, but you're watching everybody and the way they conduct themselves and the way that they talk about things. And those moments that you remember in those meetings when I had brought something up that challenged the belief level in yourself and the belief level, and if that guy can do it, I know I can do it. Mm-hmm. And then you just went out there and did it. Like, I never heard you say anything like, I'm going to be the top guy, blow everybody's doors off. You just went out there and did it.
Isn't it funny? I was joking about this the other day. It's like everybody that says that stuff, like, oh, yeah, I'm going to be the top guy. I'm going to beat everybody. It's like, where's that guy? I don't know. I haven't seen him since he said that crap.
No.
It's like just the people that put their head down and do the work. Awesome, dude.
So now, 4.5 years later, coming from never having done sales before to fairly quickly going from an entry-level position in sales to asking the questions about how do I move up into that position.
Mm-hmm.
How do I get that? And then you went and put in the work and fairly quickly went and earned your spot as a kitchen table professional. And one of the things I love about early on, I was trying to figure out the things that you did that were different. You know, same conversation I had with Ty Hubbard, asking in front of a group, what are you doing that's helping you be successful, so we could have some other people in the room pick up on it. I asked this very same thing of you in those meetings when you're on like cloud nine, making more money than you've ever made.
Mm-hmm.
And Obi, what are you doing that's so different and has you closing at such a high ratio? And one of the things that sticks out to me that you said was, I'm just telling them I'm not a salesperson. And it feels like it completely disarms them, and all of a sudden all of the tension that was in the room has completely left, and they're just there present with me listening to the things I have to say.
I think that's a good point, because you probably actually felt like you weren't a salesperson, right? Because some salespeople would just say that, oh, I'm just not a sales guy, but all they care about is closing the sale. What do you think is the difference between you saying I'm not a salesperson behind somebody else who says it but still all they care about is a commission?
Because I 100% believe it. I don't believe I'm there selling them anything. I think I'm there helping them get out of their way. I always make this, I'm a little older, so you guys will get it, but maybe not the guys in the room that are 20-some. But I always tell them I'm Hitch. I'm Hitch for windows. I just got to get you out of your own way so you can get what you actually want. Because you guys hate salesmen. You don't want people there. Well, I don't want to sell you anything. I want to help you with the problem that you're having. You know you have a problem. That's why I'm here, so let me help you do that. And if it doesn't end up working, why are we here in the first place? That's fine. And I always tell my guys now, like the tables I said, at the worst case, you got marketed, right? You know who we are, and you want to work with us in the future, right? And they do. And then JJ goes back and closes them, or Jetzel goes back and closes it, or it's a year later and I go back and close that deal. Because no matter what, I'm marketing. That's the way I look at it. I'm still not a salesman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome, dude. Because I think that's a big difference, is that perspective of being at someone's kitchen table and all you care about is a commission, or actually serving them, providing value with a great product.
Yeah.
Right.
It's huge.
And it's still, like, you may be marketing, but I've listened to your closes. And you're also leading people to the decision that you know is right for them. So you're closing. You're a salesperson. But the way that you present it and the way you position yourself with them just psychologically, it disarms them.
Yeah.
So, you're doing things very similarly to what other salespeople are doing. You're just approaching it in such a disarming way that I think it's cool to be able to watch your other guys now go out and duplicate that in their own way.
Right.
And be able to take the psychology that we've already built into our script, and it just kind of doubles down on this no pressure, no obligation. We're here to help you and fix a problem for your home that we know exists. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here.
Right.
And it's kind of it's refreshing compared to most sales experiences that they've had. Pretty much anything else that they've ever done. The philosophy in sales typically is to do all those things, but do them in a way just to get the sale. And people immediately, whether or not it's obvious or not, are just like, there's something fishy about this guy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's what it is, because it doesn't matter if you're there providing value or whatever. What separates the good salespeople from great salespeople, a lot of times they have the same pitch. They're overcoming objections the same way. Their presentation is very similar, but it's how they present it to the customer, because it's what their intentions are while they're there. Are they actually looking for a reason to make this person's life better, right? Or are they just looking for a way to get paid? And for whatever reason, people can feel it, whether you say it or not, right? People can just feel the difference. If you're there to actually provide value for that person sitting across the kitchen table, then they know it. You're looking for solutions. You're asking the right questions. And through those questions, give you ammunition to close. And, of course, you want to close. You want to get the check, but it's for a good reason. You know they're going to be happy, right?
Absolutely.
That's why it's such a different feeling when you're in a slump and you're trying to get a sale. Because even if you have that approach, they can tell that something's off with this guy.
Yep.
He's got the commission breath. He needs this.
That's momentum versus the lack of momentum, right? I said it the other day. It's like the lack of momentum will make a strong leader look weak, but with momentum will make a weak leader look strong. But the same thing is with sales. If you got a lot of momentum in sales, it's like, man, you got a ton of momentum. You got more appointments than you know what to do with, but maybe you're not that good. You're probably going to close at a higher ratio than when your skill set's a lot higher, but you don't have as much momentum simply because of your mindset. It's like there's been times in my career where I was double, triple, quadruple booked, and I have a customer call and cancel. I'm like, thank goodness. I didn't know I was going to get all these appointments taken care of anyway. And my closing ratio was high because I really didn't care. It was like I did the same thing no matter what, but I really didn't care. And there was other times where I had one appointment for the day, and it's like, man, this one appointment I have to get the close. And I show up. It was a perfect scenario. Perfect. I should have closed, but I didn't. And it was all because of the momentum that I had. It was all because of my mindset showing up to that kitchen table, right?
It makes a difference. I think one of the nice things, too, about getting out of a slump is if you've trained the people underneath you correctly, and they're setting those appointments in our model, the setter closer, and they're setting things exactly the way you say them, there's so much consistency that you can line up. I mean, it's a home run every time. Somebody's just throwing a slow softball to you that you're just going to bang home, and you know it's going to happen, so you can get yourself out of that slump with that right guy that you've trained correctly.
Yep.
I think that's why part of sales is the training. And I like to think that I always tell the guys, you're telling a story. That's what we're doing here is we're telling a story. And you may go into a story not knowing it, but you're going to get to the point where you know the ending, you know the beginning, you know the end. So no matter where you're at in this story, you can tell it correctly.
Yep.
And if I can tell you a story well enough, you'll listen to me, intimately. And then we can make a deal work out with each other.
Yep.
And so being able to do that and then having a story, because basically what I would say that the coordinators are doing, the setters, is they're giving the preview, right? It's the preview of the movie. And I'm like, shit, I want to see that movie. That movie looks awesome.
Yep.
And then I show up and I kill it, right? Or any of the guys that I'm working with are killing it. That's what we're trying to do is you have to have all that, and that'll constantly progress you in that way to where you don't have slumps. You're constantly on your momentum swing. It just never stops.
Yep.
But it's through constant motion, right?
Absolutely.
And that's the importance of having a process. Because without a process, I was talking to a solar guy that used to do solar. He's now here onboarding with JKR Windows. And he is fired up because we have a process. And that's what he wanted. Like people, they want structure and they want a process that they can follow that is going to help them see the light at the end of the tunnel, that they're following something that's going to help them see success. And in most organizations, they're just like, here's how the best guy is doing it. Go out with him and just try and do as close to what he does as possible.
We've had so many conversations on this.
Yeah.
Because when you have a process or a system, that system is duplicatable. And most people aren't naturally talented enough to be like the top guy. Usually the top guy is the top guy that never develops anybody because they're not duplicatable. They're trying to wing it, and they have all this charisma and all this stuff, but they can't ever teach somebody to have that. It's like, how do you teach somebody to have charisma? You don't. No. But you can teach somebody a system. You can teach them what to say, when to say it, and how to say it, right? And that's why I think a system is so important, because it allows us to duplicate ourselves into other people so we can work hard, master the questions, master the presentation, master overcoming objections. But more importantly, we can teach somebody else to have results using that same system, right? And then you can recruit the masses because anybody can learn it. Anybody can do it because it doesn't take some natural talent or skill to be the top guy. It's just like I always say, it doesn't matter. Let's say the top guy's doing $1 million a month. It's very easy, even if you don't have the skill set, he has to beat him, because all you need is just 10 dudes that do 100,000 each. It's pretty easy to beat him. One guy just has a somewhat little better month. He has to crush it to do more than $1 million. You got 10 dudes. You just go do a little bit and you beat them, right? Yeah. That's through duplicating yourself and duplicating the process. So it's powerful when you're able to duplicate something because you have a good system, you have a good process that you can teach other people, and they can learn it efficiently, effectively, and fast, right? They can get it quick and go get results because that's what retains them.
Yeah, and I've always said that we wanted to build a system that wasn't for those 10% guys. They're going to be successful no matter where they go. Their charisma and their natural skills, they can have a couple of bits and pieces like bullet points and just be able to go make it work. But, man, we want to have a process where we can bring somebody in from a construction background like us and be able to teach them and build confidence in them that we, as long as you're coachable and you're committed, we can teach you how to do this. And this is the story, and it all lines up, and you tee it up for this person, and the story is lining it up perfectly for it to be a slam dunk. And we also know if you set it up right, because if somebody answers the door and says, I'm just going to be mowing the lawn if you can just grab some measurements, we know if you followed the process, that would have never happened.
100%.
Because we know if you followed the process, they're taking us to the kitchen table And we know this is going to be about 45 minutes to an hour, and that we're asking them to make a decision today, yes or no.
Absolutely.
You know what's awesome about that too is when you have a system and a process that's duplicatable, and anybody from any background can do it, whether they come from construction or it doesn't matter where they were working at a restaurant or whatever. The guys that are really good look at the people winning and go, Obi actually said at the beginning, if they can do it, I can do it. Like, no problem. If they did it, I can do it. And then they come in here thinking like, oh, dang, this is easy. All I got to do is do this, follow the system, work the process. So a lot of times you actually end up recruiting these naturally charismatic dudes anyway, just because you have a good system that they look at everybody winning and go, look at all these derelicts making all this money. It's going to be easy to do this, You get them anyway. It's awesome.
I know that's what worked for me too, man. I was watching these guys that they just weren't anything special, and they had a kind of a lifestyle and were making the kind of money that I wanted to make. And at the time I was a mechanic, and I was working my freaking eyeballs out to make, money that I wasn't even all that excited about. So if there was even a chance that I could make even 50% of the money that they were making and have the kind of lifestyle that they were having, I was all in.
Heck yeah.
All in. And that's what we want. And we've been able to see it now firsthand. We've attracted some incredibly talented people. And they come in here and stick through some tough times even because they see the potential. And when you combine that with the system and the culture and the vision for what we're trying to do for the future and the opportunity that creates for them to have a place to grow into, you can do something special.
Absolutely.
And I think that's where, we've seen a lot of businesses and the things that we do now. And the more aware you become in business because of what you're doing, the more you start to pay attention to what other people are doing. And I went to dinner recently with a guy that runs his own business, and he's where I was 8 years ago. And 8 years ago, you couldn't have convinced me that I needed to do things differently, just like I'm trying to plant these seeds with him. And as soon as it comes out, he's got an excuse teed up. Why he's not doing that, why it won't work. Okay, well, if you want to stay there, and if you want to be the guy that everything has to revolve around, you've just got yourself a high-paying job, buddy.
Yep.
And that's not what we're trying to do here. At JKR Windows, it was very apparent to me early on that for me to be able to ever do anything special with this company, I was going to have to build a system that people could come be a part of, that they could plug into and see an opportunity for them to build a business within inside of a business and be into something for themselves, but have the full infrastructure of JKR Windows, that they didn't have to worry about go through all the nightmares that I've gone through over the years. And to plug into a system and see other people doing it so they're not stuck at that level where that guy's at. And he doesn't even, because of the grind that he's in and the way that he's spinning his wheels, he's not even opening any feedback right now.
Yeah.
But we've got examples like Obi that have came in here and have done it and have plugged into the system and have gone from making, $75,000 a year to making $60,000 a month. And I think you even had a bigger month than that.
Probably.
What's your biggest month?
No, I think the biggest month was about 60. Yeah.
It's awesome.
So far, yeah.
Good job. Were you making that doing handyman services?
A year for a whole lot more work and a whole lot more headache, because then I had to deal with all the back end stuff that the operations team here has to deal with. Customers that somehow have no understanding of construction, think they know better than you, and you're like, okay, well, I guess so. So yeah, this is a whole lot better. It's a plug and play.
It's awesome.
I always explain it to the guys, like, it's kind of like a franchise but easier. And you don't have to pay $1 million to buy a franchise. You just show your worth. That's what I think. It's amazing, being able to do this and open it up and really develop all the other people to do exactly the same thing, which only develops me further. It's just, I think sales is one of those things that's, I would say, coming into sales, I definitely had that look too of like, oh, it's sleazy. It's the used car salesman guy, the guy that's talking to shit that you don't need. But having done it in this company and seeing that it's not like that at all. I mean, it can be if you're with other people, right? I've had to deal with those customers that have dealt with other people. But like being the integrity that we have at JKR and how we take care of our customers and how we do things and being able to stand behind that and say like, yeah, we're going to make some amazing things happen. Just works a lot better. I like it a lot more. It makes me feel better about what I do, and then I can bring people up to do more of that.
I think that's the difference between the amateur and a pro. when it comes to sales. You meet an amateur, and that's usually the car salesman dude. They're like walking to buy a black car and somehow leave with a red one, and he's bragging about it, thinking, ha, I sold them anyway. That's an amateur. All they care about is making a sale next. A pro doesn't do that. A pro is looking for a way to solve problems for lots of people, and they're really good at asking questions. They're mastered their craft, and everybody wants to work with a pro. Unfortunately, with sales, because a lot of times in sales organizations, they'll give anybody a shot, and almost everybody's an amateur. It's very rare you meet somebody who becomes a pro at sales. But when you meet the pro, you know it very quickly. And they're rare, and it's not some special born thing. It's just somebody who's decided to master their craft, somebody who's learned a presentation. A lot of times it has to do with training other people, because you have to master it to be able to train somebody.
I think that's the point I was trying to come across.
Yeah, I think
I get lost in my thoughts sometimes.
You did a great job at it, and I think that's what makes somebody a pro. Is if there might be somebody listening to this right now that maybe they've got an opportunity to train somebody and think, well, I don't get paid to do it. Well, you actually do, because you become better at your craft. Because when you're learning something to teach it, you learn it dramatically different. So when you're teaching it and you can simplify it, that's what separates an amateur from a pro. And a lot of times it's not just your income, but it's how people feel about you. And whether you're buying a car, or you show up to Best Buy to buy an electronic piece of equipment, or it doesn't matter what it is, buying a piece of real estate, when you deal with a pro, it's very obvious. And it isn't a lot of times about what they're wearing or what they're driving, or a lot of times it's just their knowledge, experience, and willingness to serve, and they've mastered their craft. And I think when you're talking about that, that's what I've watched you do. You have mastered your craft. Talking about listening to Ciros, it's very obvious, dude. Nobody needs to see what you're doing. You can listen to it and go, dang, this dude knows what the heck he's doing. It's very obvious.
And he follows his own personal system.
Yep.
Because if you go back a year ago and listen to one of his serials and listen to his very latest serial, almost identical.
Yep.
Identical. He makes the same jokes in the same places.
Yep.
And he points out the same pain points to the customers that he knows are going to get them moving in the direction that he needs them moving.
Yep.
Almost identical.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we need to teach people.
Fundamentals work, right?
Yeah.
It's not having to do something different every time and get creative with your process. It's just finding something that works and then going and doing it over and over and over and bringing consistent energy to the way that you do it.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's the difference between somebody in sales who's trying to be creative to close every sale, or somebody who's just mastering their craft and working their numbers to get the results. And then over time, through experience, they get better at asking the right questions, knowing when you ask a question, because somebody could ask one question, right? And then the difference between pausing after that question and waiting for an answer, or continuing in your script, or continuing to ask another question after before you actually get the answer. You learn those things through experience, right? 100%. How would you say, because to me, I've always said, I think when I meet an amateur salesperson and you watch them do an appointment, a lot of times they'll ask the right question, but they don't understand how important the energy is on the appointment. So before they get an answer, or before they let it sink in for a second, they'll immediately ask another question, or they'll answer the question for the customer instead of letting it get a little bit awkward. Maybe they ask a closing question. How important would you say is learning those questions to ask, but then the timing of those questions, and then controlling the emotion on the appointment?
I think it's paramount. Like, it doesn't matter if you say all the right words, or if you say the script exactly, but if you can't ask the right questions to the right people, you're not going to get the right answers, right? Leading questions or whatever it needs to be, you need to ask the right questions that are going to be specific to that person. So that's why I always train on personality types and understanding who you're talking to and what's going to matter to them. If I'm talking to a person who's a tiger and he cares more about the look, I'm not going to ask him about the way that it operates, where all the little intricacies that go into keeping it energy efficient, compared to an owl who 100% wants to know all of that. He doesn't really care about how it looks, right? I need to know exactly who I'm talking to.
Yep.
And so in the beginning, there's always going to be little finder questions I have. There are little feelers, I'd call them, just to see what kind of person am I dealing with. And I'm also observing the room, which you don't see in serials, right? But you know that it happens.
Yeah.
So that way I can ask those questions. And once I get those questions, I know that I have to leave it to a certain extent. I need to let them answer the question, or I need to just let that sit in. If it's a rhetorical question, I just need to let it sit for a second, let you ruminate on what I just told you or asked you, and then hype into it. And if you can't create the emotion, I always say, I mean, people keep the sale because it's logically, it makes sense, but they buy because it's an emotional thing, right? So I need to do both sides of it, and that's why the story is so important. Right, when we get to the end of a series that we love or a movie of a hero, and we're just like, oh, that was amazing. You know, we got bought in. We know it's fake, you know, or we know it's not, but it's something we can all understand as a human. So that's where it's important to do all those things, to get the questions, know the story, say it. Hopefully that answers your question.
It does. So how did you learn to ask those questions, when to ask them, when to let something sink in? How did you learn that? Like, what did it take for you to be able to get that?
A lot. And so that's why part of the reason why I feel like a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of focus on materials or in the appointment, all of it.
Yep.
I always boil this down. Like, people ask me, like, well, what do you do, or how does this, how is that guy closing? I'm like, guys, there's not one right answer. It's a whole lot of right answers. That's why, like you said, you can't tiptoe in 1 foot in here, 1 foot over there, because if you do, you're not going to put the time into getting this down well enough to make enough money doing it. It's because it takes a lot of that stuff at home, where when I was first learning, we didn't have syrup, we didn't have a lot of stuff back then. So I was going around those people. I surrounded myself with those winners. Like, all right, let me go out with you, Ty. I'm going to talk with you. Or Justin was here, and Justin was an absolute killer at this job. And I would just talk to him constantly. Hey, what about this? I had this question. And I would ask questions and figure out the answers, and I would commit it to memory that this is a big enough deal for me that I need to understand this and keep it going. And then it just, over time, I would institute it. I think that's the other thing, is I would ask the questions, or I would read, or I would listen to a podcast or a YouTube video on this stuff. And I'd commit it to memory, and then immediately I would use that. Whether or not it was the right time, I would find out by using it. So you have to put it into play, right? If you're not doing the practice, it does no good to know exactly how to swing a golf club if you don't use it. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's the same old thing. But so I would say all of those things. You need to do all of those. You need to be reading. You need to be watching the podcast. You need to surround yourself with people who are winning, and then act. I find a lot of times in this with people I'm trying to bring up or working with, is that I have one or the other. You know, they do all the thinking side of it, but they won't act on it at all. Or these guys will only act, but they won't do any thinking. So putting those together seems to be the commonality.
It's perfect, man. That's what I was looking for. I've said this before on this podcast, that training salespeople is almost like taking off an airplane. You know, take off an airplane, you have to do 188 miles an hour, I think, plus or minus, right? Depending on the weight. But about 188 miles an hour. And a lot of times sales guys will go, man, how come I'm not getting the results I want? You know, how come I'm not getting the plane off the ground? Well, you're only doing 170. Like, you're just not doing enough to actually learn. So I think that's where you talk about the act part. Once you get the plane in the air, then we can start to learn how to fly, but you got to get it off the ground first, right? And a lot of times in sales, it's like guys want to know everything before they do anything, or they want to do everything and not know anything, right? So I think you gave a perfect example of that, because a lot of times people they might do 5 appointments and they don't close one, and they think, oh, I suck at this. Maybe God's trying to tell me something. Yeah, he's trying to tell you suck. You need to get better. That's what he's trying to tell you. You know, you got to put in some more effort and energy and learn from other people and listen and read and do all of those things. So I think it takes me to another question. So when you were listening to these podcasts, you're reading the books, you're doing all this stuff, when are you doing that stuff?
All the time.
So when is all the time?
So,
because you're obviously you have to work during the day. You've got a family.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got a lot of kids, dude. I don't know if you figured out what's causing that yet.
If only I was the only reason for that cause, right? No.
So, but you've got a big family. So you've got work to do at home. You've got work to do, obviously, to make money, and then outside of that, you're having to master your craft, right? So when are you doing these things?
And that's where being intentional with your time is super important. There's a ton of time in a day. And I'm a person, I don't need a lot of sleep to keep running, so I can go 5 to 7 hours, actually any more than that, and I'm more tired throughout the day. So when I would wake up in the morning, and I still do it, I'll listen to a podcast or I'll get onto a book. I travel all the time with this job, whether it was taking pods or going out of town. If I got an 8-hour drive, I don't listen to music for the most part, mostly because I'm older and I hate the music nowadays. But I get a lot of information. I'm like, that's an 8-hour seminar if I got an 8-hour drive,
100%.
that I can learn so many different things,
Yep.
and I can get this done. So I would listen to books on the way, or I'd listen to podcasts, or I'd be making phone calls in the car. I'd get back to the house and I'd be reading more books, or reading at the house, say at the end of the night, come home. And this is the other thing for me, coming from the background I had, and I know you worked at WTL, so you know what it's like. I could work 18 hours a day, sometimes 20.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know, you just worked.
Mm-hmm.
So working, I find that guys that come construction, if they're open-minded to learning, they do so well, because our work ethic is through the roof. I have no problem working tons of hours, because I know when I looked at it the same way, like you always say that people are aggressive, or was it they're constantly with the lazy thing. Ambitiously lazy.
Yep.
That's 100% me.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, I know if I just put my work in, I can get to a point where I'm a director and I can make more of my own schedule, because I'll make enough money throughout the week that I don't have to work every single day, or I can take certain times of the days off. And so I did just that. So I was a sprinter. My mom's always told me I'm a sprinter. I'm not a long distance runner, but I'm a sprinter, which is fine. I can sprint 100 yards and then walk 100 and then sprint another 100. I'll still get there, but I'll work it a lot faster, So anytime I get to a new level, I'm sprinting. When I took over the OSL, I was balls to the wall sprinting, because I wanted to get this thing back up and running, get it back to a good place. And so that's the way I took it. So anyways, to answer your question, all the time.
Yeah.
Any spare time I had, that's what I'm dumping into this. Right now, instead of doing sales things, I'm more into trying to figure out how to teach sales better. That's the thing. Like, I understand it well enough to explain the concepts, but sometimes if it's like, going to a calculus class, but you're trying to teach kids, fifth graders, I can't teach you calculus yet. I got to work on this stuff. So I'm having to learn how to do more of that stuff. And then obviously I'm doing a lot more on leadership and trying to figure out how to create more me's. So, but all the time, I guess is the best way to say it. Any free time I have, that's what I'm doing.
That's awesome. Because I actually think that's where most people let up. When you talk about working in the hours, I think actually most people will work when they're supposed to, but it's when they're not supposed to. That's where the difference. When nobody's watching is where all the difference is made in my mind. When nobody's around, when the lights in the stadium are turned off, when practice is over, what are you doing when nobody's around? And I think that's what makes a difference between an amateur and a pro. Are they turning their car into a classroom? Are they listening to the radio or to music? Are they going home and practicing their presentation and listening to Ciro's and recording themselves doing it and role playing over and over? Or are they just going to sleep, They're watching television at night? And I think also where you have a family, I know Jefferson, you have a family, our kids watching us do this stuff is powerful. The impact it makes on their lives by watching us practice, drill, rehearse, get better at our craft, doing the things that most people aren't willing to do when they come home. Like, what are you doing late at night when nobody's watching? What are you doing early in the morning when most people are just, watching the news or whatever? Those are the things that make all the difference in someone's career, but it also makes all the difference in our kids' lives as they watch us do these things, because they grow up and just think, oh, that's what my dad always did. How often do we do something that we go, oh, that's what my dad always did?
Oh, yeah.
And
I would say, look, I agree with that. My son, I always brag about him, but I've always been really hard on him. I was not the dad that you lost the championship and all. Yeah, it was definitely the refs' fault. I made my son cry in his first championship because he lost it, and he blamed it on the refs, and I was like, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
You can't let the game up to the refs. That's your guys' fault. You guys made this mistake. You specifically made this mistake. Doesn't mean you're bad. Just means you can get better. Losing's okay. We don't blame somebody else. We take it into ourselves. So he's seen me always teach that, and then always he's seen me drive and do other businesses and working really hard. But then with this specifically, seeing me do the work at the house, because it's different when Dad's out of the house and he's just gone compared to Dad's home, but he's still doing this. And I'm making time to do this. So, hey, guys, give me 30 more minutes to finish this chapter and really get it, and then I'm going to play with you guys. And then he sees that, and he takes it into his work ethic now with whatever he's doing. He's always working hard. He's figuring out right now he's just getting into wrestling. It's his first year.
Awesome.
And so he's at home. He's like, hey, Dad, I was learning about this and learning about this. Can I turn on TV? I want to watch YouTube and see if I can get it done for myself. 100%, man. Get on there. Let's watch it. I'll teach you what I know, having wrestled like for a year. So, they see us do it, and they follow it. And then especially coming from the background that I was, where I think at WTL the most I ever grossed was about 100,000 a year with bonuses and everything. And then I had some other things. But him seeing like, oh, Dad's really struggling. He's working his tail off every day as a handyman to try to get business and then to work the business to where he's at now. Where it's like, oh, I need to go get clothes, Dad. What can I here? Take the car, just go. Get it done. What's my limit? Just get what you need. Don't buy stupid stuff, right? He sees that now, but he sees it because the work ethic that I put into getting this, that there is the payout on the back end.
Yep.
And then when he saw me take over the office, he was, oh, I'm so proud of you, Dad. That's so amazing. But he saw that I didn't just slow down like, oh, I can sit back now. It's like he saw me working even harder, which made a big difference. I think it's impactful.
It's powerful, dude.
Proud of you, dude.
Thank you.
It's cool to hear and to be able to sit across the table from you and regurgitate all the stuff that we've talked about over the years.
Yeah.
And all the stuff that I know that you've taught other people. And I talk about this all the time because it's important to me. But there's a difference in getting to a point where you can sell at a high level and then taking the time out of your day to go and teach somebody else how to do it. And I think there's a reason why we have the relationship that we do, because our philosophies align really well. And I get to hear you talk about it a lot with other people and see and recognize and call people out when they are being a little bit selfish, and you want to try and get them realigned, just like you've heard me do so many times in those meetings, about trying to plant those seeds about becoming a leader. And it's not all just about you. Because I don't know, most salespeople, they just go through their whole life and have to start over every freaking day.
Yep.
That's not what I want for people. That's not what I wanted for you when you come in here. And so every time we're having this conversation again about directors being out knocking doors, I'm saying you should never be out knocking doors by yourself.
Right.
Oh.
If you ever want to get out of what you're doing today, you better have some activity that's going to help you get out of doing what you're doing today.
Yep.
And what better way than to go develop yourself as a leader and to be able to communicate all the stuff that you've done in the past to get you to where you are now and help somebody else get to that place too. Because you want to go build value in the marketplace, go develop yourself as a leader. There's not very many leaders out there.
Yeah.
Nope. That's why they get paid a lot, because there's a lot of value in them, because there's not very many of them. They're rare. So.
And you can accelerate the process, and you're a prime example of that. I've watched you every step of the way accelerate the process and go and put in a large amount of work in a short period of time to earn yourself the respect of the office as the top coordinator. And then there was no question in anybody's mind that you deserved the promotion to director. There was no question in anybody's mind who was the next OSL in St. George. And then you've gone and proved yourself. You guys are having a fantastic month. You've developed some incredible people over the past 3 months. Proud of you.
Thank you.
Kicking butt, dude.
Appreciate it. I wouldn't be here if it hadn't been for your dream in the first place of making this happen and your leadership. What was the other day we had that sit down out there and we were talking. I was like, I was telling my wife, I said, sometimes I get to talking to these guys and I start saying things and I couldn't figure out the answer before, but them just looking at me and then I'm like, oh, that's the answer. And you didn't even say anything. And I'm like, oh, I think we should probably just do it this way. You're like, And I'm like, what the fuck just happened? Like, it's crazy.
Mastermind theory, dude.
Yeah.
Just get two minds together. And we're on the same wavelength. We have similar philosophies, and just being in the same room with each other.
Yeah.
It helps. I know it helps my confidence being in the room with you guys.
It's kindred spirits, man.
Like, we want to make some decisions. We want to do something special together. I've got your best intentions at heart. I know you have mine.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, we're just thinking about some badass shit just out of thin air, just by being around each other.
Yep.
Yeah.
Iron sharpens iron. Yep. So it's an honor to be in business with you, gentlemen.
It is. We're just scratching the surface. I'm looking forward to you going to a whole nother level. That 7-figure income is right there on the horizon.
When's your goal to go over $1 million?
In the office or myself?
No,
for myself
to make $1 million inside of 12 months.
I want to be done with it by next year.
Okay.
By this, December of next year, I want to be there.
All right, dude.
Yeah.
I think you'll do it before that.
That's my goal.
Awesome.
Is to push it. If I can get to that 7-figure income within the next year, it's going to change everything for everybody in my family.
Yep.
So.
Well, you're on your way, dude.
It does. It changes. Your kids have already got to experience something special with you in your transition.
Yeah.
And it changes them forever. Just if you were to stop it all right now, it's already changed them forever.
Oh, yeah.
But the version of you that you have to become to earn a 7-figure income is even the next level of commitment and exposure to those kids about what's possible for them. Because me and you had never been exposed to that.
No.
My dad made more money than any other single person in my family. He was a firefighter, and he was making, it was $100,000. It was like, oh man, if I could ever make $100,000 like my dad, I'd have made it.
Yeah.
Because I'd never been exposed to anything else.
Yep.
And now my kids are exposed to something completely different. And I don't brag about my money, but they see what's going on, and they see the success that's happening around in our directors and our OSLs and the people that I surround myself with. It's changed my kids forever. But what excites me is the version for these big crazy ass goals that we have to go hit $1 billion, and that's a lot of effing people that we get to go help.
Yep, it's a lot of lives
millionaires.
changed. Yep, it is.
A lot of millionaires.
Exactly.
It's a lot of customers that we get to go help over the next several years. It's a lot of lives that we get to impact, and whether they stay at JKR Windows or not, we get to expose them to a different way of thinking that they may not have ever been exposed to had they not come in here and seen the purple walls.
Yep.
I think that's what's incredible about this opportunity too, is just the fact that, like you said, getting to that next level, I have to become even more than what I am now. And I 100%, all the time I wake up, I'm like, shit, I should have done this. This would have been better today than that. And I have to reevaluate what I do with my time or how I'm operating. But it takes people from a sometimes $30,000 a year job to $30,000 a month once you reach that level personally. You won't get there without doing that. Right? Without that personal growth. It may be a spurt that you get away with it for a month and then it'll just disappear. It dries up. We've seen it.
Yep.
Right? But to keep moving up these levels, it really is development. And being around the people that we're working with. That's what I love about this, is just that every step of the way, as I earn a higher income, I am smarter with that income than I ever was when I first did $100K with JKR.
Yep.
I have way more money in the bank than I did then, just because of my spending habits.
Yeah.
I've changed that. I've changed the way they operate. I changed the way they think about things. My kids have changed.
Change the way you do taxes.
Yeah. Actually do them, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully we can fix that with Trump, but I hate the IRS.
Hopefully the situation gets better.
That's funny.
So it's just phenomenal. That's what I love about you've done with this program. It really feels like a self-development program more than a job.
It's awesome.
I think it's crazy, and I feel like that's why I'm so inspired to try to get everybody else up there. Like, guys, you have no idea the person that I used to be, compared to the person that I am now and the person that I'm going to be. And I think about that all the time. Like, oh, man, I can't – once I reach Jeff and Jeff's level, and I have more than 7 figures in the bank account, 8 and 9 figures in the bank account, like, holy moly, the person that I'll be then and the amount of people that I can impact is going to be phenomenal.
Yep.
So it's just super cool.
You're already impacting a lot of people's lives,
You
man.
are, dude. I'm proud of you.
Well, I think the message of the day is you never know what you're capable of until you get around a group of people that starts to challenge you.
Oh, yeah.
Because had I never been exposed to sales and that environment and that culture and people talking about reading books and spending time with her family instead of watching TV and all these concepts that were normalized for me. Now it's like, man, I think there is more possible for me than I had ever really even thought about.
No doubt.
When it comes to self-development and who I could become and the progress that I could make and the money that I could make. So tap in. If it's not JKR Windows, go tap into something that you can find that for yourself.
For real.
And to build some more awareness and perspective on what's possible for you. We would love to be that vehicle for people, obviously.
Of course.
But the idea behind this is it's not just about that. It's about awareness and perspective. And you never know where it's going to come from at what time in your life. But somebody could be listening to this years from now. And it was the right time, the right message, the right story, an example of somebody like Obadiah Longoria that changed everything. I know I can relate it back to one of those cool moments in my life that changed everything.
Yep. Anybody that's ever done anything always has a few of those moments they can always look back to and know the exact time that it happened. What's crazy is when it happens at that time, you actually don't know what's happening. You only know it's happened once you start winning.
When you trace back and you do a little reflection and you're like, holy cow.
Yep.
Everything changed in that moment when I decided to make a decision and commit. And it was that that example of that person that didn't seem like anything special. And I thought to myself, why not me?
Exactly. Why not you? Love it.
Thanks for checking in to another episode of Just Real Quick, you guys. If you got some value out of this, please share it with somebody who you think could benefit from the message. And if you haven't already, like and subscribe to the podcast. We need to get as many people exposed to this as humanly possible. We want to show up every time and bring as much value as we possibly can with the stories, the strategies, and everything that's going to take your life, your sales game, your leadership to the next level. Come check in again for more episodes of Just Real Quick. Thank you. Later on.